G'day, freedom lovers. Here we are with another episode. Today we've got Nick Dametto.
It's a pleasure to be on the show, freedom lovers.
Thanks, mate. It's a pleasure to have you here,
Matt,
dude.
yeah, it's a pleasure to be on the show. I'm obviously pretty interested to hear what questions you've got to ask today, but also give my view, not just political, but yeah, my personal view on a number of topics that you'd like to bring up today.
Yeah, awesome, mate. So I had an idea earlier to maybe try something a little bit different and, you know, get to know you and why you sort of got into the political realm.
Yeah. So I guess, who's Nick Dametto? Nick Dametto grew up in a little place called Hawkins Creek near Ingham, a farming community. My grandfather was an Italian migrant that came out to it from Italy after World War II. And he married my grandmother, my nonna, as the Italians would call them, who is a first generation Italian living in Australia. Her father came out after World War I. On my mother's side, English, German, and believe it or not, Chinese heritage. Okay. I'm a 7th generation Chinese living in Australia.
There you go.
16th Chinese, you can probably see a splash in me somewhere.
I wouldn't have known unless you told me.
Yeah. So that's pretty interesting to know your heritage and that sort of thing. Obviously, we live in Townsville now.
And helicopters are getting us again.
Helicopters and the army base is just there, so we can hear them at the moment.
Yep.
But yeah, grew up on a small cane farm owned by my grandfather. My father and my mother lived there and started raising me there. Parents split up when I was quite young. Dad ended up going into tourism and then later into building and that sort of stuff. But I ended up growing up on the farm until grade 10, and that's when we moved into town, into the little town of Ingham. Completed my, I did grade 12 at Gilroy Santa Maria Catholic School up there, and then did an apprenticeship at the Victoria Sugar Mill, Victoria Mill, which was owned by CSR at the time. So I fit a boilermaker by trade, got into mining and construction after finishing my apprenticeship. Took me everywhere from the Northwest Mineral Province all the way over to Western Australia, so up in the Pilbara region, some of the harshest, hottest conditions I think anyone could work in across Australia. Ended up coming back to Queensland, would have been about 2015. Decided that I wanted to do something different. My old man used to have a dive boat, used to service the Orpheus Island Resort and a game boat back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and decided that I wanted to get into tourism. So I rang my father up and said, hey, I'm going to buy a dive boat, Dad. What do you reckon? He goes, no, don't even think about it. Go and do a business plan and try and figure out all the reasons why you're going to go broke and come back to me. Anyway, being from a bit of Italian heritage, sort of the old bull and the young bull with the Italians, I couldn't let him beat me on this. So ended up going buying a whole fleet of jet skis, ended up with 6 of them at the start, and started Townsville Water Sports working out of the Breakwater Marina. On my days off, usually in mining, I'd be out on the water. I love water skiing, love diving, water sports. So I wanted to actually share that with people that were visiting North Queensland, and even some locals that had never been out on the water before. Was doing that for about 2 years, and I got a phone call out of the blue from the Honourable Bob Catter. Just a phone call out of the blue. I'd met Bob about 5 times, probably about 5 times. You meet him at the pub, you see him at the cafe. Bob's everywhere in North Queensland. Yeah. Saw him out at the Ag Show out there at Mount Stewart, and he said, Nick, actually really funny story. He ended up ringing me out of the blue. I was about to drive into Ignatius Park to pick my son up from high school in the afternoon, and it's like, hi, it's Bob Catter here. Got a job opportunity for you, Nick. Can't talk much about it on the phone right now, but someone will ring you in a couple of days. And he hung up. And if anyone knows Bob Catter, that is the shortest conversation you'll ever have with Bob.
Yeah.
To the point where I actually thought one of my mates were actually pulling me leg, pretending to be Bob Catter, saying. So my wife asks me that night, what happened today, love? And usually it's a pretty interesting conversation when she asks us how my day was, because anything could have happened. And I said, I think I took a phone call from Bob Catter today, and I told her the story. And she said, well, you're either going to get a phone call in a couple of days or not. And that's life. So I ended up getting a phone call from Bob's office wanting to meet, and ended up sitting down with Bob on a Sunday night at the Qantas Club as he was on his way to Canberra, which I thought was quite odd. But now that I'm a Member of Parliament myself, you just utilise whatever time you have to meet with someone. Yeah. Anyway, Bob ended up asking me if I wanted to run as a candidate for the seat of Hinchinbrook, and I said, probably not, Bob. Running a small business now, haven't really discussed this at length with the family, and I'm pretty happy with what I'm doing.
So what prompted him to call you?
So if you ever meet Bob, you'll notice he's always got things written on his hand.
Yep, I've definitely noticed that.
And it's a big hand. If anyone's shaken Bob Cutter's hand, it's a massive hand. But he's always writing people's names down in notes and stuff. And he said, Nick, people are my business. I trade in people. People vote for us. I meet people that are in, that own businesses or are looking for staff members. And I'll meet a young lady at the bar on a Friday night or a Saturday morning and say, she's got a bit of charisma about her. Maybe next time someone's asking for a great person for, front of house for a law firm or something like that, and someone just needs a bit of a leg up, he'll suggest them. Anyway, he's taken my name down and put it in his little book somewhere, and he's always looking for candidates and people that maybe could come on as staff members even for himself. So he's called me out of the blue off the impression that I've made when I've met him one of those 4 or 5 times.
Okay.
So anyway, I said pretty much no to Bob, but it left me with the thought, geez, I've been asked to do something pretty significant here. I didn't think I was the kind of person that would be great for politics, but obviously someone as influential as Bob Cutter has seen something in me. So it's left me with a few thoughts, and I sort of thought to myself, should I be considering this? And then I got a phone call from Robbie Cutter. And if anyone's met Robbie, he's probably the nicest bloke you'll ever meet. Very charismatic, but he's not even trying to turn it on. He's just a good bloke. And I met with him a couple of days after meeting Bob, and I'd already made my mind up, because I thought to myself, we all get asked these sorts of things, like, we'll have a beer with a friend or a glass of, having a cup of coffee with a mate at a cafe in the morning. We'd always discuss, what's wrong with the state, what's wrong with the country, what's wrong with the world, really. And I thought, here's a good group of people that have asked me to put my hand up and, try and change things. And I thought, if I don't say yes to at least running as a candidate, I don't really have the privilege of ever whinging again, I think.
Yeah.
If you give it an opportunity to try and change things, at least put your hand up and say what you believe in. And if you don't take that opportunity, I thought, well, I can't whinge again. So sat down with Robbie and I said, mate, if I get to work with you on a daily basis, I'll have a crack at this. And here we are.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So for those who don't know, because we've got a bit of a broad reach, it's not just Queensland. I've discovered we get contacts from people on islands and even Canada from time to time. So for people who don't know, your area electorate is Hinchinbrook.
Yes,
that's quite a large region. Where are we coming from? Say, is it as far as Tully down to say Bushland Beach? I believe it is.
So the Bowley River and the northern beaches of Townsville. As far west as places like Mount Isa, so the top of the Great Dividing Range. Anything west of that's Robbie Cutter's.
You covered all the way up to Mount Isa. I thought it was a little bit further in, to be honest.
Sorry. Mount Fox.
Mount Fox, yes.
Robbie Cutter takes over Mount Isa.
Cool.
So Mount Fox I go to, top of the Great Dividing Range.
Yeah.
But also as far north as Tully Heads.
Okay.
And it's great. So I'm with a small, minor party at the moment, so Cutter's Australian Party. And the great thing about Cutter's Australian Party being an MP is all 3 of us MPs at the state level actually border each other's electorates. So we joke about being the holy trilogy sometimes, but it's great sharing a border with Robbie Cutter and Shane Canoove to the north in the electorate of Hill, because there are a bit of crossover and people can feel quite confident they can walk into our office or into Robbie or Shane's office and get the same treatment. Yeah.
No, it's awesome. How do you go covering such a large ground? Like, you see a lot of the, politicians in big cities, they can get around in a little buzz box, You've got a lot of ground to cover. How do you go with that?
Well, I don't envy Robbie Cutter for sure. He's got one of the largest electorates in Queensland with only 18,000 people stretched all the way from, the Cape of Queensland all the way down to places like Normanton. I'm having down towards Georgetown and places like that. But the reality is, you just got to get out there and do the job. Robbie Cutter's gone and bought himself a plane and got himself a pilot's license. I spent about 45,000 kilometres per year out in my vehicle driving around the electorate, and I like to be hands-on. People want you to come out and understand their problem. If they've got a drainage issue, they want you to walk the drain with them. If they've got a problem with some tree clearing permits that they're trying to get, they want to come out and actually see what they're trying to do. So I don't spend a lot of time in the office. My office tries to keep me out in the field.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
You find many challenges having to be out in the road so often? Break down on the side of the road?
I might give Toyota a bit of a plug here. I drive a Toyota Hilux. It's reliable as hell. Yeah. I turn my vehicles over every couple of years just to make sure they're reliable. But probably the biggest challenge is the roads in North Queensland here, getting to places in a timely manner, and you've always got to try and manage your time to make sure that you're not late going to the next meeting, because if you're late at the next meeting, you put your whole day schedule out of whack. So one of the challenges, of course, during this time of year, it's winter in North Queensland right now.
You can tell we've got sleeves on, you know.
The weather's absolutely perfect, but what we do have is this southern migration of tourists. So a lot of the grey nomads or people travelling in caravans, and unfortunately with single lane most of the Bruce Highway, North Queensland, so you're only as fast as the slowest. Yeah, has 3 or 4 caravans in front of you.
Yeah, definitely. And there's a lot of trucks and things like
exactly,
that.
Exactly,
I mean, having worked in the news, I've seen my fair share of accidents related to both of them, and the impatience of all that sort of stuff. You know, people do need to be cautious, but, you know, some
funnily enough, those caravans and slow-moving vehicles that are doing 80 or 90 seem to be able to find 100, 105 in the tank when they're going along the overtaking lane. So wouldn't it be great to go a little bit quicker along those just to get around those convoys?
Yeah, I noticed you had a little poll on the bulletin. Some 70% of people seem to agree with you on the concept of doing 120 in those lanes.
In the overtaking lanes,
but I must say, a lot of people seem to think you can do that already, because they only want to do 120 in the overtaking lane when you're trying to get past them.
Like I said in a couple of interviews, we're already doing it. Let's just formalise it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So when we last caught up was the good old crime scenario.
And the crime rally in Townsville.
Yeah, we've now had a homicide as a result and whatnot. Things are getting out of hand, and what the Palaszczuk government put up, what was the exact word? An immobiliser scheme. That seems rather futile and expensive.
It's like pissing on a bushfire. That's probably the best way to describe the immobilisers. We're not going to say no to it. Anything can help. But at the same time, you've got something that's, it's literally a bin fire here in Townsville at the moment. You're going to have to do a little bit more than throw a cup of water on it to try and put it out. And people have asked me, what do you think needs to be done when it comes to youth crime and crime in general? You need to have you need to have punishment for crime that fits the crime that's being, committed. For example, if you've got a child that's stolen 5, 6, 15 cars, and the first time they get in front of a magistrate, they send them out to Cleveland Bay or send them away with a warning for it's just ludicrous. There's kids out there that are actually trying to up the ante every night because they want to go to Cleveland Bay Detention Centre as a badge of honour. It's not a deterrent. The KAP's got some pretty strong policies on youth crime particularly. We want to see, firstly, our relocation sentencing policy introduced, which means we want to send kids to a Western, remote community or remote area to do their detention. So building a detention centre in a remote area where you don't have to do the big, 15-foot fences to try and keep the kids in. The remoteness is part of the security. But while they're out there for 6 to 12 months, ensuring that they're going through life-changing programs, everything from, firstly, getting them off the drugs and alcohol. First 3 months is getting a kid cleaned up. Next 3 months, you could spend time and trying to actually teach them something, trying to teach them some life skills so that when you assess them at 6 months to see if they're ready to come back and plug in as a productive member of society, they've got a chance. After 6 months, if you're assessing these kids and they're not ready to come back, well, they don't. They spend a full 12 months out there on this remote location, making sure that they're turning their lives around and getting the help they need before they come back. Sending a kid out to Cleveland Bay Detention Centre for 2 to 3 weeks is like youth justice, youth crime, I should say. It shouldn't be called youth justice. Youth crime university, where they're making connections and they're learning new skills on how to better steal cars and stuff. And by the time they get out, they're 10 times better than when they went in at doing the crimes that they're committing. We also want to see kids that are committing adult crimes tried as adults. Kids that are stabbing other kids and high-fiving as they're walking away, that's gut-wrenching to parents to watch. That's gut-wrenching to anyone out there in society that's something wrong with our youth. So if kids are doing those things, they're making a conscious decision to do those things.
Definitely. I mean, I sit there with, I've got a young girl. She's like not even 2. And she sees something like that on the TV and it emotionally affects her.
It does.
She's 2 years old and understands that that's bad.
Everyone knows right from wrong. It's instilled from a young age. And, it's interesting. I did bring this up in Parliament a couple of months ago, a month or so ago. We've got one hand, the state Labor government saying that, these kids have not got the cognitive ability to know right from wrong and make right and wrong or adult decisions.
If that's the case, then I would propose that this child needs therapy.
That's right. Yet you've got the same people in government and the same sort of ideology, the same people saying kids as young as 12 and 13 have the ability to decide on what gender they are, whether or not they should start going through gender reassignment sort of surgeries and treatments before they get hit puberty. And you're thinking, well, if a kid can't understand right from wrong and make adult decisions, how they got the ability right there and then to make a decision on something as life altering on what your gender is going to be for the rest of your life? It's nuts, right?
It's the typical leftist kind or far leftist.
It's poisonous.
It's beyond the standard traditional leftist. Let's just be good to each other and look after the environment. It's gone to a point now where it's just illogical. It's
almost like a terrorist arm of the left. And a lot of people these days, I'm pretty forward thinking myself. For someone that pretty much sits centre right when it comes to my politics, but at the same time, let people do what they like when they're an adult. Make your own decisions, but leave the kids alone.
Well, what they do in the privacy of their own home, that's fine. If you're a consenting adult and you want to go for some sort of, even if it was plastic surgery, and I mean, I've seen enough what happens when plastic surgery goes wrong to not be playing with vital parts of my body.
Exactly.
So I think it's madness, and to me, I can't help but feel is the medical industry making a lot of money out of this? Is that a factor that's driving this? I
love listening to people like Jordan Peterson, for example. Psychologist, psychiatrist, knows exactly what's going on out there, and this is an industry. This whole gender reassignment stuff. It's definitely a lot of people that are making money out of this, and I think that's a bit of a sickness. It's rife not only in the US, but it's spreading into places like the UK and Australia now.
Yeah, it's bad, and especially when you see those big murals of people in bondage gear painted on the wall, and people doing their demonstrations, walking down the street naked. I don't care what your sexual preference is. That's lewd behaviour.
Exactly.
Just not.
Once again, you see these sort of protests and stuff, and there was a recent one along the Strand in Townsville, I understand, and don't push this on kids and families while they're out there having their Sunday lunch or cooking a barbecue or kicking a soccer ball. Leave that for your for the bedroom and amongst your own friends groups, as far as I'm concerned.
I don't see anyone in society oppressing them. I don't understand what they're all jumping up about. To me, it just seems like I just want to walk down the street naked. Like,
it gets me.
I'm all for freedom, but I think there are lines. When your freedom is encroaching upon others' freedom, now we've got an issue, sort of thing.
I always find it interesting that a lot of this stuff is making it into everyday workplaces now. So I was of the understanding you weren't supposed to sexualise the workplace. Plain and simple, that's sexual harassment. And pushing your ideas and ideology on me in the workplace can be seen as sexual harassment, as far as I'm concerned. I don't think Pride Day should be brought into workplaces. I don't even want to see your rainbow lanyards in my meetings, or because personally, I don't care if you in the workplace. I don't care if you're back homosexuality, transgender, or whatever diverse sexual denomination that you come up with. Maybe I should start wearing ties into Parliament to say, I love having sex with women. I'd be the worst person on the planet. I'd be misogynistic all the way through to God knows what name they'd come up with. But why should I not be able to profess my heterosexuality while I meander around my workplace? It's interesting.
It's a psychological phenomenon, is the only way I can really put it, man. Which kind of brings us into the same sort of construct as the climate agenda, really. And I mean, I believe it's within your area is this the Mount Fox wind farm they're trying to put up at the moment. And does Chilumban fall into your realm, or is
it's up in Shane Canute's area? So wind farms, aren't they an interesting topic?
having come from Victoria, and I recently returned, and these eyesores are just everywhere now, you know, and there's a wonderful website, and I'll pop it up here on the screen for people to go and have a look at. And it's amazing how frequently I go and check this thing and find they're doing 2/5 of nothing.
Yep. There's a huge shift globally right now when it comes to energy production. And personally, I don't believe the energy shift has anything to do with climate change. I don't think it has anything to do with saving the planet, because if you have a look at you know, the work that goes into, you know, creating these wind farms, the environmental offsets that you've got to create, the negative from, you know, constructing but then also disposing of these large solar farms, I don't think it's about saving the planet one bit. I've always believed it's been about shifting the wealth. It's about shifting the wealth from those that were making a lot of money out of fossil fuels, which is a fuel source that isn't about to run out. The best way to create any hysteria or drive any value in any market is to create scarcity. I believe there's
or fear.
That's right. So there's a lot of people that, you know, they believe that there's a lot of oil still left out there, and I've seen some of the science that backs says there's a lot of oil out there still, and a lot of coal. We aren't running out in a hurry. Yes, it is not a finite resource, but I don't think the emergency to get rid of is really there that we're running out. So obviously that wasn't going to run out in a hurry. That means that we had the people that wanted the shift of wealth had to come up with a new way to get people to go away from spending money on oil or coal to something else that they were investing in. So those that invested in renewable energies needed to start doing that in such a way where they had to create some hysteria around it. So a lot of people right now that live in cities or don't understand how the environment actually works, they've got an eco-conscience. And I believe we all got pretty much an eco-conscience now. I don't throw my rubbish out the window. Yep. I dump in the right place. We don't pollute the waterways. But people feel like they need to go further than that. And most people in cities, they're surrounded by concrete, some of the most highly polluting areas on the planet. They feel if they, you know, do the right thing because they've been sold this green energy myth, they're doing and playing their part to actually save the planet. And you know, it's interesting that we're going to switch to nearly 80% or whatever it is, 100% renewables here in Queensland by 2050. I haven't really bought into the whole thing, so I'm a bit rubbery around those figures. But the fact is, Australia as a whole, we contribute 1.5% of all global emissions. So we're willing to send Australia broke transitioning to renewables to, you know, halve or come back to 70 or 80% of 1.5% of all global emissions, while other parts of the emerging, you know, third world countries in Southeast Asia actually ramping up coal production, coal-fired power station production.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever had as many coal power stations as China's built this year.
Coal-fired power stations are, you know, the number one source of electricity in China. Interestingly enough, I actually got a chance to visit China in 2019 as part of a parliamentary delegation. And I remember distinctly keeping an eye out for solar panels, because a lot of Australia's solar panels are actually imported from China.
Yep.
I was in Shanghai for 10 days, and I did not, actually I lie. I saw 2 solar panels. One was on a little tripod that was powering a bank of cameras that was surveilling, using surveillance for one of the parks in Shanghai, and one was on the side of a little building somewhere. I don't know what it was powering. But in the background, the foreground, I should say, of Shanghai, there was at least 4 coal-fired power stations chugging away that I could see.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's madness.
It's madness, yeah.
And that's all to produce these solar panels.
Exactly right. So, to sell the myth to to silly Westerners.
It's madness. And again, to see what they're doing, you know, like we've got some of the footage, and here's a little link to our, previous video on the Chilumban issue. I imagine it's going to be the same amount of fox.
Yep.
They're bulldozing rainforest.
Yep.
That's saving the environment. Bulldozing rainforest. Yep. I mean, if that's not a walking contradiction, I don't know what is.
Interesting. When they were building the wind farms at the back of Springmount there, at the back of Mareeba, I was actually at a mate's wedding. And, you know, you sit at a mate's wedding where you don't know all the people there, and I was stuck on this table, and I started a conversation with this gentleman across me. I said, "So what's your job, mate?" And he said, I'm an environmental engineer. So, oh, that sounds really interesting. I'm working on this wind farm at the moment. I said, well, what's your project? He said, well, we're actually moving a whole heap of endangered quolls away from the area that we're about to, bulldoze to put up these wind farms. I said, oh, geez, that's interesting work. He goes, yeah, we've got these little quolls. They're very cute little animals, a little marsupial rat-looking thing. And we put tracking devices on them, and part of my project was actually to go out and actually track where they are and where they want to live. So that's where we use that information to go out there and move the families of quolls. I said, oh, that's brilliant, mate. I said, I heard this rumour, I don't know if it's true or not, or I saw it on the internet, that the large wind farms actually, the blades of the wind turbines actually create a frequency that attract birds. And in particular, the big eagles in Australia, wedge-tailed eagles, and they can be really like a bit of a kill zone for them. He goes, yeah, you're right. But he said, sometimes when we were tracking the little quolls, we would actually find the GPS trackers when they stop moving in wedge-tailed eagle nests. So we're actually saving a few of the little quolls. I went, this is madness I'm listening to.
Okay.
So this guy's project, of course, was to save quolls. He couldn't give a shit how he saved them. He almost suggested that
so it's okay
knocking out a few wedgies was going to save the quolls. Anyway,
that's an interesting concept.
It's a warped state of affairs, environmental science.
Man. It is. It's very interesting. I find the justifications people have to continue down the path of insanity. Like it's to me, it seems rather tiresome. I'd rather just get on with reality. Well,
the problem is there's a lot of people out there that work in industries that unless there is a problem that needs solving, their industry does not exist.
Yes,
that's plain and simple. Everything from reef science to climate change. If they solve those problems, there would be thousands, hundreds of thousands, across the globe that would be looking for a real job.
Yeah.
And there is only a few jobs out there on this planet that actually create wealth.
Yeah.
Every other job that sucks off that is a parasite. So if you're in mining, if you actually build a product that you can sell, if you're in manufacturing, agriculture is another one where you actually create a commodity or a product that has value associated with it, where you can sell, which is useful. Everyone else, basically feeds off those industries, and creating hysteria around the agriculture or the energy production. Those industries feed off that fear and feed off those industries to actually create a dollar.
Yeah, and I guess that kind of comes into a lot of the stuff that's going on with The Voice at the moment. Again, if they solve some of these, issues, they'd be out of a job. And it doesn't seem that, a lot of the money seems to go to where it should go. Yeah. I'm hearing a few stories of people who are supposed to be, getting that money to where it goes, are actually funneling it into their own pockets. And now this voice to Parliament to me, which seems to be, I think at best racist.
It's separatist.
You're putting one race above another. That reminds me of another point of history where, these people were saying that they were for the workers as well. And they also said that socialism was good. I'm seeing a few similarities with perhaps another party that's running and going, It just seems like history's attempting to repeat itself, and I can't see. It's not like this is something that happened thousands of years ago. This is within our recent history. These events became very troubling. And it's also, they're talking censorship as well, which is another element that goes along with this political point in history. Again, I can see there's so much pushback from the general community and even the Indigenous community themselves to go against The Voice, that it seems that the Labor Party's perhaps, best strategy is to silence dissenters.
Interesting. Obviously, the Canada's Australian Party, which I represent, have put their hand up very early in the piece and said, we're not voting for The Voice. We're voting against it. Plain and simple. We think it's separatist, we think it's paternalistic, but at worst, it's actually divisive. And you can't create a system where we're treating a different race or a different genetic group of people or culturally group of people differently to the rest of the nation. I grew up I'm born in '83, so during the '90s and the early 2000s, Australia was all about multiculturalism. I think most people would remember that. It was about, creating a multicultural Australia where, traditionally we didn't all get along in Australia. We had immigrants from, China, Italy, Spain, Germany, and they didn't traditionally get along with the traditional Aussies when they first came over here, the Greeks as well. And there was a real big push. We started seeing Indians, Pakistanis, Afghanis immigrating to Australia. And the whole idea was, let's get all these cultures to melt and work together. And I think we almost achieved that. And I think those that that profit and do well socially and politically from divisive perspectives within society had to come up with something new. And the Labor Party's hit the nail on the head here with the voice. Trying to elevate or give people a stronger voice within the parliament or in the way laws or how society works in this country is very dangerous, dangerous. And people like Bob Katter Senior's father, so I don't know, Bob Katter Senior, he worked very hard and out at Cloncurry when he was a member of Parliament. They actually had the picture theatre out there, the Katter family. And they were the first picture theatre in Queensland or maybe even Australia to drop the segregation laws, to allow Indigenous or blacks and whites to watch movies together at the movie theatre. Pretty groundbreaking stuff at the time. But what I think the state government's trying to do with treaty and what the federal government's trying to do with the voice is reintroduce the separatism. I love Indigenous culture, but I also love my Italian culture. I love the fact that my grandfather had the nous to leave war-torn Italy to come out here and try something new. I love the fact that, I look at places like Ingham, where I grew up. Everyone from the Finns through to the Spanish and the Basque and, the Chinese, the English, the Germans all played a critical role in building that community. And whenever I'm asked these days to do a welcome to country or, acknowledgement to country, I take it upon myself to acknowledge every culture that's in the room, not just the Indigenous, because we all play a part in building what Australia is today. And anything that tries to separate that is just poison, if you ask me.
I totally agree with you, mate. I think it's the only way. Yeah, everyone's welcome. Why are we isolating people?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, you can't have it both ways. Are we doing the inclusiveness or are we doing the segregation? Make up your mind, guys. Again, I have to point out the insanity of this leftist movement where they're here, 1 minute they're there, the next it's like I can't keep up with what's going on. Like it makes no sense. It's void of logic.
And for some Indigenous people, what's going on right now is actually quite patronising.
Yeah.
It's almost like saying, you can't succeed as a culture and you can't succeed as people in this country on your own, so we've got to give you special consideration. I think that's quite patronising. I'd like to see people, it doesn't matter if we're talking about gender quotas or all the way through to Indigenous employment quotas. I want to see people in this country elevated because of their abilities and their successes, not because of the genetic makeup or culture.
Good old cost of living. That's a huge one, man. Me personally, I'm struggling. The good opportunity to say give us a donation because I've got mouths to feed. The missus is preggers. We're lucky.
Four soon, right?
4, man. So
I stopped at 1. I figured out where they came from.
Yeah. I'm a glutton for punishment, and I'm a hard learner. So I mean, I've got 4 to prove that if you do these things, this is what happens.
Yes.
So I can, without a doubt, say that's where babies came from.
Tick.
But man, the cost of living, especially after this COVID madness, it's just skyrocketed. Like I'm coming out of the shopping centre, $500 sometimes to feed the family.
I feel like I'm being robbed every time I go to Woolworths.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm being robbed. The cost of living, I don't see that coming down in a hurry because during COVID, there was everything from shortages in the supermarkets off the back of transportation and the ability for even growers to get crops off and stuff like that. But it seems like the big corporations across the nation have decided, well, even petrol prices should be coming down. Have a look what a barrel of oil's worth at the moment. That should be nearly, we should have at least another 50 or 60 cents coming off.
I noticed they're really quick to add that price when it goes up. They seem a bit reluctant to bring it back the other way.
Because there's profit in it. It's once there's an excuse to raise the price, seldom do you return to those prices post that price rise. Now, we've also got the Reserve Bank of Australia, ratcheting up interest rates. And, it's interesting because I bought my first house when I was 22. After I finished my apprenticeship, I got straight into the mining industry, and I decided I'm not going to blow every cent that I make. And as a young person, it's easy to do that when you're making good money. But I ended up buying a house because I thought at least if I pay my repayments every week, that's like a savings account for me, right? I can blow the rest, which I pretty much did. Had a good time in my 20s. But the reality is, people saw those low interest rates, and it was like a little hook for people that wanted to get off that rental merry-go-round. And I always believed, and still believe, every Australian should have the right to own their own home, own their own little patch of Australia and Queensland, raise their family, that sort of thing. So people, the Australian dream is to own that home. They saw those low interest rates, and the banks, they use it as a huge hook. They got people in, and people that could not afford to pay the high prices of property at the time, the overinflated prices. And those people now are right now struggling the most because, a couple of points in the interest rate rises, you go from having to pay, $400 or $500 a week repayments through to $800-900 a week. And, that doubling of the house repayments, that's really killing people and they're hurting families right now.
Oh, yeah. Particularly in the more built-up areas where the real estate's worth a lot more. We're pretty lucky here in this region that the housing prices are relatively low. Like when I left Victoria 6 years ago, one of the major factors for leaving was the housing prices was just beyond our reach. I couldn't save at the same speed that they were raising the prices. It was just, it was impossible. And when I seen the opportunity to come up here and I looked at the housing prices, I'm like, wow, I might actually get a home. It can be done, and within 6 months, I bought this place.
Man, it's really interesting, that phenomenon of the great southern migration to North and regional Queensland. So I met a couple of people, and these are people that were actually buying homes in North Queensland that were above the asking price. I said, why the hell would you do that? And they said, well, it's still cheap. We've secured the home we wanted to retire in. You've got people in Melbourne or Sydney, for example, that went, I'm sitting in the middle of built-up Sydney. COVID's taught me that I probably don't want to live in the city anymore. I can sell my 3-bedroom shitbox for $1.5 million. My 30-year-old son, he was never going to leave home because he couldn't afford it. I'm going to give him $500,000 as a deposit to go buy his own house so he can go and try and pay that off in his lifetime. Still got $1 million in the bank. I'm going to go buy something worth, $500,000-600,000 in North Queensland, retire in this beautiful tempered, winter up here at the moment. And I've still got money to throw back in the still got money to go throw back into the super, and life's good. So you can understand why people came north. But the problem that we did see locally was it overinflated some of our prices because people that we had their eyes set, and I'm buying something worth $300,000-400,000 is now worth $550 on an average. That's sort of how quickly it rose. So good for house prices to go up, but that's how things get inflated.
Yeah, definitely.
Yep.
So what can we see for in Parliament to you say you don't see it coming down anytime soon? What kind of things can we do to sort of bring that down? Because I think it's a pretty important issue. Like it's affecting everyone, whether you're rich or poor.
It's an interesting concept on how can politicians fix this problem. Now, not many people want to acknowledge this, but you got to rewind a little bit. You might have remembered the LNP, Scott Morrison. He came out when he was campaigning that he was going to send the budget into the black. He was going to back in black. I remember him running the ads. Many people might not remember that, but during his election campaign, it was back in black. That's what the LNP was aiming for at the federal level. All of a sudden, comes along this global pandemic, and the powers to be said, "You've got to shut the country down." Well, I actually thought things were going to go a different way, because we had a Liberal government that's usually quite good at saving their pennies and not going to waste the country's money. I thought we were going to go into a depression, and I was actually personally preparing for that. Making sure you had enough to look after yourself. The Morrison government did the exact opposite. They out-laboured a Labor sort of style policy when it comes to hard times. And they actually borrowed, people don't remember this, but they borrowed $1 trillion. They didn't even tell us where they borrowed the money from. So they could have borrowed the money from China, the Arabs, who knows?
So do we know now?
No, we still don't know. We still don't know. It's locked up in secret.
How do we not know after all this time?
Yep, it's locked up. It's a secret. So the government went and borrowed $1 trillion, right? And what they did is they stimulated the economy. That created the inflation that we're seeing today. They threw money at people that were on welfare payments, doubled their welfare payments. Geez, why did they goddamn double the welfare payments at a time where you couldn't leave your house? Ludicrous, right? What did they do next? They stimulated the building industry. They stimulated small business. They threw $1 trillion out there to stimulate the economy. Now, you just can't essentially print money and throw it out there and not expect inflation.
Yeah.
But it was a short-term fix to keep people happy. Coming into the last federal election, I truly believe that the LNP did not want to win that last federal election because the Reserve Bank raising interest rates, inflation, the cost of housing that was going up off the back of that, what I think was a bad decision. Felt good at the time when all that money was getting thrown around, but the reality is you can't throw all that money around without having some sort of negative repercussion. So, the Labor Party's got and I'm not sticking up for the Labor Party here at all. They've got things that they can do to try and fix this, but that inflation, that cost of living rise was going to happen off the back of a Liberal bad decision. So you ask the question, what can governments do to try and fix this? Unfortunately, I think there's going to be some time where just naturally that money's got to be soaked up. That money's got to be recouped through interest rates. The banks are soaking that money up right now. Things will level out at some point, but you're going to see some pain out there, and that's something that I don't want to see. What government can do, they can lower the cost of commodities not commodities, but things like electricity. Instead of the electrical generation in Queensland, which was largely owned by Queensland and Energy Queensland, try and drop the electricity price. You don't have to make a profit from this stuff.
Yeah.
You can make sure that you're spending money in a way where you're not wasting it. Stamp duty when it comes to insurance. Cutting those things, cutting the costs on everyday items that the state and federal government adds through taxes. That's a way that they can reduce the cost of living right now and make a real difference.
Well, that'd be great to see. I'd look forward to seeing you push that one in Parliament, man, because, I mean, it's not like I go out buying stuff I don't need.
Yep. When you artificially stimulate the economy, though, this is the things we get.
Yeah. And you only got to look at the price of gold versus, the value of your dollar. That gives you a big indication, and I mean, it's been on a steady increase. I think I remember standing at the Perth Mint, it was about 1998, possibly earlier, and an ounce of gold was $360.
Yes.
It hit $3,000 recently. Because man, I wish I bought that ounce of gold.
When money's not worth money anymore, like when $10,000 isn't worth $10,000 anymore, you've got a problem. You've got a real problem.
Yeah.
Especially when wages haven't gone up significantly to follow that. But the problem is, as soon as you put wages up, this is the hard thing to balance. As soon as you put wages up, all of a sudden the cost of things have got to go up as well, because the people running those businesses obviously have got to put their prices up to deal with the higher cost of wages. Another interesting thing that's happening at the moment, and in particular in Queensland with the Brisbane Olympics and a lot of large government jobs at the moment. So when the building industry in particular, government really only cares about one thing, and that's on delivering projects on time. They don't care about on budget. So they will throw exuberant amounts of cash, your money, my money, at solving their F up. So when they say we're going to hold the Brisbane Olympics, which we're completely against, mind you, the Palaszczuk was celebrating winning the Olympics for
I think
Brisbane.
she's the only one that put a bid in, wasn't she? Nobody else wanted it.
No one else wanted it. exactly right. So they're showing off to the rest of the world right now, probably their friends at the UN. But now we've got to bear the cost of building these things. And also, any private contractor or private investor has now got to compete against those construction projects that are paying above and beyond what they would have normally paid for those construction workers. So when you're trying to build a high-rise set of units right next door to, the Gabba refurbishment, and someone's working for, $70 an hour at the Gabba, and, the going rate is, say, $45 an hour for that same construction worker across the road, where do you think that worker's going to go? You can't blame them. Cost of living's going up.
I'm going for $70
across the
straight
road.
away.
But that project now doesn't financially stack up, because when you've got to sell those apartments, you can't sell them at $2 million an apartment when the going price for apartments around that area may be $750, $800. But if you start having to pay the price of construction that is a paradox or parody to the construction work that's going on right next door, how do you compete?
Yeah, exactly. So do you see this Olympics thing bringing enough into the economy to justify the cost?
One word, no. There hasn't been an Olympics in modern times that's actually turned $1 for the economy in the country that they've actually held the Olympics in.
I believe in Melbourne there's still a fuel excise that they never removed from the 1950s Olympics.
Yep.
So, they're good at putting taxes on and don't seem to come off.
The most recent large games that they had was the Gold Coast Commonwealth Games. People left the Gold Coast in droves. Businesses suffered significantly because no one stuck around. No one spent money. I was a tourism operator at the time when the Olympics was when the Commonwealth Games was being held, and I was told that we're going to see all these on-flow business to regional Queensland in the tourism industry. Not one of those tourism operators saw any of that benefit.
Wow.
Yep. People came for the games, people left after the games.
And we weren't in a massive state of economic crisis, I believe, at that point, like we are now. So
Not yet. We thought we were at the time, but it was almost like the government went, hold my beer.
Yeah.
Let me show you something here.
Yeah, definitely, man.
Yep.
I can't, truth, I don't have the disposable income to do anything. I went to the Townsville show because we won tickets.
Yeah.
Otherwise I wouldn't have gone.
Yep.
I've
got a son in Brisbane at the moment doing university, so I feel like I'm on apprentice wages again.
Okay.
They always make the joke, the family tax benefit should start when they turn 18. That's when they start really costing us some money.
That's it. The price of shoes and all the sports, and
it's unbelievable, isn't it?
It doesn't get any cheaper. They eat a lot more, especially when you got boys,
Yep.
So, yeah.
Yep.
Well, man, is there anything else you'd like to throw out? Hey, maybe you can ask me a question for a change.
All right, so I guess, I love what you guys are doing, trying to get the message of freedom in this country out to, us freedom fighters out there. What do you see over the next 10 years Australia looking like if we head on the trajectory that we continue to head on?
The way things are going, if I look into my little crystal ball, I see some very dark days ahead. Very dark days. I almost don't want to say what I think because I'm trying to keep a positive mindset. I'm quite concerned. And particularly in the face of censorship. Like, am I going to be able to do this channel soon?
Yeah. Yep.
This could be the last time we speak. I don't know. And as I said to you the other day, one of the reasons I started doing this is because I seen behind the scenes in the news, they're specifically blocking people like yourself and One Nation and very independents. And there's so many, the Greens get a bit of a prop up, like they never sell a bad story, but even they don't really get spoken to. It's pretty much Liberal Labor. That's who we're speaking to, and the extent they go to justify those things is quite disturbing, So I feel what we're trying to do here is offer a real voice, not just to a specific group, but to anyone. And an analogy I put out to people too is, You know, if you turn on the TV and you see a 15-second, 30-second ad
Yep.
for a movie, you
Yep.
probably get more information out of that than you would the 45-second to a minute story that you get in the news by the time they're done repeating themselves over and over again. They barely brush over a lot of issues. They're not informed. If you sit down and watch the news for half an hour, half of it's ads. You know, so we're down to 15 minutes. You can cut off another 5 minutes for sports. And
Yep.
I mean, if you love watching people run around chasing balls, best of luck to you. But you've got 10 minutes of information left out of your half
Do
hour.
I really care about the, I guess, the firefighters that, you know, rescued the kitten out of the tree today being the number one story of the day? Do I really care about
It's a
that?
lovely, heartfelt story right before we show you a lovely car wreck and some more, you know, dark, disturbing times that we see in the news. And you know, the amount of times we've dropped stories in the middle of something. Oh no, somebody's died. Let's go death and tragedy. It's always the number one seller because it's easy. It's the same reason death metal always promotes Satanism and hatred and all that, because it's easy. It's not a challenge.
Yep. You know, it's interesting, like I said a little bit earlier, we got a chance to go on a parliamentary delegation to China in 2019. And some of the things I saw over there, that, you know, how they control the people in China, I'm pretty sure the government was over there trying to get some ideas. But just imagine this, and we're heading this way. There's cameras popping up at every corner, and you know, it's only a software upgrade to try and link that sort of stuff.
And Jenny
through
Hill
Wi-Fi
thought what she's claimed the other day at the crime rally: 500 to 600 cameras in Townsville, and it's not a small town. And she thinks the best solution is more cameras. The 500 to 600 hasn't stopped anything.
So I'll give you a bit of a lasting thought. So when I was in China in 2019, Shanghai, one of the most populated cities in the world. There's actually 27 million people living in Shanghai.
Wow.
Right? That was a figure that was told to us at the time. And in the main areas of Shanghai, every 300 metres, there was a post with 3 cameras on it, triangulating every shot. Every shot. Through their technology, with their linked camera system, they can, through heat seeking, they can see large groups of people that are congregating together. They send people over there to investigate. They've got facial recognition technology to decide whether or not who's walking around with what. They're also logging through AI who's hanging around who.
Yep. And I believe that goes against social credit score.
They've got the social credit system.
So you've come and spoken to me on the network, and that's it. Your social credit scores come down.
Correct.
You know.
Everyone. So it's cashless society, pretty much in Shanghai these days. They use a Alipay or WePay through WeChat with a QR code to pay for everything wherever they go, right? If you're jaywalking across the road because you've decided you're in a bit of a hurry, and that's illegal in Shanghai, you'll be sent a fine directly from the cameras that have picked your face up to your phone. If you don't pay that in a required time, all of a sudden, your phone, your account through your WeChat or your Alipay account is blocked. Government's got full control over your bank account. So you got to jump on the bus in the morning and you can't pay. The bus doors lock on you until you pay that fine. And guess what? Just after you pay that fine, your social credits come down. And not only, I don't know if you know how social credits work, but not only do your social credits come down, but your friends as well around you. So it's very scary stuff. Yep. And you know, are we headed that way in Australia?
It looks like it.
It feels that way.
Yeah, like I said, 500 to 600 cameras, and Jenny Hill wants more. You know, and of course at the benefit of my tax dollar. You know, I mean, you know, she said, "Oh, we can get it, you know, federal and state budget." Well, that's again my tax dollars, but I've got to pay for the operators out of my rates yet another tax. Thanks, Jenny. Appreciate that, really do.
But at the end of the day, we've got to try and find ways to curb the crime, and you know, that's probably the only way that the council has an ability through surveillance or putting these big rocks up around town.
But as we pointed out, if these kids don't give a shit,
they don't care about being caught.
It doesn't matter.
The legislation's the only thing that'll fix it.
It's a waste of time. So why not? You know, we obviously need to fix the problem. Cameras ain't it?
No, that's right.
That makes me wonder.
The honest people honest.
Yeah, it makes me wonder. Like, are they happy for this crime to continue? Do they allow it so that they can justify more cameras?
It almost feels like it, doesn't it?
Draconian measures to go along with them. You know, also, we put the cameras in, that didn't work. Let's try something else even more draconian. And you know, I had to quickly check that story in regards to the what was it, the interlockers or whatever?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
Yep,
the immobilizers.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm like, well, how's that work? Are you trying to put like something in there so we can just remotely turn cars off?
Yeah.
Oh no, it's a little fob on the keys that they stole. Okay.
Interesting stuff. Interesting stuff. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting.
Likewise, man. We'll have to do it again sometime.
And thank you very much for everyone that's taken the time to listen today.
Yeah, definitely. Please drop a comment. If you've got a question for Nick, we can catch up again at a later date. Drop your comments. You might even be able to answer them straight away in the comment sections.
Give us a follow on Facebook, Nick Dametto NP. And I'm pretty responsive to the messages there, and looking for any questions, and happy to answer them in a timely manner.
No, that's it. You can't do your job if you don't know what the people want.
That's right.
So, yeah, be proactive, people. Get involved. Pay attention. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe if you can. Have a good day, people.